and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our closing speaker. You've seen him before walking around our breakout discussions, sharing his years of leadership experience and war stories. Sergeant Major Kent gave him a shout out yesterday. He decided to invoke his humility clause and asked that I not read his extensive bio. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Lieutenant General John Sattler.
What did the Commandant say when he was up here? What did he call leadership? Contact sport. Leadership's a contact sport. If you've got a leadership decision to make and you're sitting in there wringing your hands, hiding in your office, I know how I'll take care of this. I'll send them a scathing email. What the hell is a scathing email? I got that one day. I said, did you take care of that problem we talked about? And yes, sir, I took care of it. Good. Well, what'd you do? I sent him a scathing email. Sergeant Major Kent was in the room. Sergeant Major Kent, he has this look. I call it the I smell shit look. When he goes, what was that? Basically, that dog don't hunt. And I said, what do you mean a scathing email? Well, I mean, it was very pointed, sir. It was right to the heart. And I ended up with an exclamation point, 2 pound signs, and 2 @ signs. They know what I meant. And I said, really? Now, that this conversation's over, go get in your car, drive down to that office, sit down face to face, and articulate what the problem is, what the fix is, and what the expectations are. No more emails. Leadership's a contact sport. It's done face to face. It's done knee to knee. When's the last time somebody read an email and had facial expression come over it? I can't remember the last time I did. I mean, really, when can you see body language and emotion? When does passion come over in an email or a fax or a tweet or whatever the latest flavor of the day is? Now, you can use those for communication. I'm all about that. Don't confuse communication with being a leader by any stretch of the imagination. So what I've thrown up here, I had the dubious task of sitting through all the great talks. That wasn't the dubious task. The hard part was taking 19 note cards full of just the gold nuggets each speaker or panel said, and trying to distill those down to something you could walk away here with. You're probably wondering, what the hell's he got up there? This is a leadership toolbox. And if you don't believe me, it says it right on there, leadership toolbox. The sad part is, you know when I got this leadership toolbox? They gave it to me at my retirement. And that's the wrong time to start building your toolbox. Thank you very much. Of course, they filled it full of little note cards and quotes and things that they thought that they had, I guess, sifted out of my conversations over my last 2 years. But I started to think about it. Whether we know it or not, everybody in this room, you already have a toolbox, a leadership toolbox. It's already been shaped to some extent by the environment you grew up in, by your parents, your aunts, your uncles, coaches, pee-wee football coaches, soccer, doesn't matter. All the way up through, if you think of the things that motivated you to be who you are today, to go for the brass ring, to truly want to be a leader. Leader in industry, leader in government, leader in the armed forces. It does not matter. Leadership, when you distill it down, take the uniform off, as one of our speakers said, get rid of the medals, throw off the gold braid, and strip the individual down to some form of clothing, not all the way, there's a visual. But when you get to that point, that leader should look the same across industry, across government, across the military. So we took a look at leadership from how do we, if you look up here, the clouds at the top, crises, how do you lead in a crisis? How does the leader, do some leaders take a brown paper bag out of their desk and start breathing in it when the crisis comes, trying to keep from passing out because they weren't ready for that challenge and they don't want to face it because they did not prepare themselves for it. Or when an organization goes into failure, think of Lieutenant Snyder. He did not fail. He was doing his job and doing it damn well inside of Afghanistan. But when the IED went off and he lost his sight, he could have said, woe is me, woe is me. I need charity, I need help. But what did he look for? He looked for opportunity. And when he made that one quote, he woke up in the morning, and all of a sudden he says, damn, I'm blind. But then he went on to say, but what can I do in my current situation? It was not, what can I no longer do? I need to wallow in self-pity. I need to have others help me constantly. I need to be a charity case. Lieutenant Snyder, and I don't think I could be him. I will tell you right now, I went home last night hollow, thinking myself through, what if that was me? What if that was me? I'm afraid I might be that other person that Lieutenant Snyder isn't. I mean, what a paragon of courage, and what a paragon of optimism that he was, and still is. Was last night, and lives his life that way. So when I wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off early, do I look and go, oh man, I gotta get up this morning. And I've got 2 legs, I have 2 arms, I have my eyesight, and you know what I have? I have my work ethic, and I have my reputation. And those should motivate me to hop up. But if I ever again start to think, woe is me, it's difficult, it's hard, I'm just going to draw strength from Lieutenant Snyder's talk last night. The cloud I put down there is we talked about those different elements of leadership, but you're all here today because you want to prepare yourself for crises. And that quote up there, it's an old Chinese quote that the best time to have planted a fruit tree, because you're hungry, you want fruit, was 20 years ago. And the second best time, today, because you can't walk that dog back. It's today. Whatever I've done in the past is in my leadership toolbox right now. But what are you going to walk out of here with? What salient points, what gold nuggets that you received from each other during your discussions or took away from the keynote speakers, the phenomenal speakers that we had at this conference? So what I'd like to do is I went through all those note cards, and I had about 19. And I didn't verbatim take down each speaker, but every time they said something that struck at my heart, that I'm thinking, damn, I wish I would have thought of that earlier. Wow, they really articulated that point. Boy, that would really work for young men and women or old men and women. I put it on the card. But then last night, the daunting task was taking 19 cards and then distilling those down to the point where you'll get out of here in time to drive home and catch your flight. So we do have a hard stop time, regardless of how excited I get here. But that was the daunting task. And going through there, going, oh, wow, how can I take that point out? It's too important not to state this. But I couldn't do it last night, so I got up this morning at 4:30 and completed the task and bedded it on down to where I believe, hopefully, these points will resonate with you. So let's go to the next slide. All right, we talked about trust. Admiral Miller said, our nation was built on trust. What did Director Freeze said? Trustworthiness. He beat that drum. Trustworthiness is the most important trait a leader must have in order to carry the confidence, respect, and the admiration of those men and women that he or she leads. Trustworthiness. So I thought, well, let's just throw down. I mean, Stephen Covey wrote a whole book called Speed of Trust. And then there's a sequel to it. I think it's called Simple Trust. Anybody read the backup book? I might have that wrong. But somebody mailed it to me. I just haven't had a chance to get into it yet. So I'm trying to take 2 books written by a pretty prominent business leader and distill it down to one equation. But that equation's in his book. If you think about it, it's almost like people say, well, physics is easy. Force equals mass times acceleration. And you can derive every other physical equation that you have to from F equal ma. You know, I was never able to do that either. But in this particular case, I'm trying to distill down trust into those 2 words. So character we talked about. If you are a man or a woman of character, that's earned. It's something that people respect. It's something you display each and every day. Competence is what am I expected to be able to do for the team. If I'm a jet pilot and I can't fly an airplane, but I have tremendous character, do you have trust in me? Probably not. I don't want the individual who comes to my house and repairs my electrical system to do my income tax. I trust them to come into the house. They're competent as hell, but there's limits to the competency. So it kind of goes back to get the person in the right seat on the bus. If you have men and women of character, I'd say that's a great hand to start with. Great hand. And I believe one of the speakers said, first thing I do is I look for the leadership. I look for those qualities. I make sure they're not, and everybody says this, so I guess it's a get out of jail free card. Excuse my French, they're not an asshole. They're not in it for themselves. And if they are men and women of character, then I shall find them a seat on the bus, or I shall give them the competency. I will train them. I will train them at OCS, at boot camp. I will train them inside my business. Every new individual joins the business, goes through corporate training to give you the competency to go along with your character. Much harder to take somebody who's a reprobate and is very competent and send them into character development. Stop and think about that as a leader. If somebody has flawed character and you don't trust them, how do they earn that trust? If you get Covey's book, he has a little chapter on re-earning trust. I'm not totally sold on it, by the way. I think if you compromise your character, compromise what everybody looks at you, and you tell me it's X, I know it's X, you compromise that one time, when am I going to trust you again? Because now, if the adrenaline's flowing, because that's when crisis hits, people are losing their heads, people get into the panic mode, the leader's cool, calm, and collected, and you're looking out to see who you trust to solve that challenge. Are you going to go to the individual who has damaged character, who you're not quite sure about? Not quite sure about. And I don't want to get this wrong, that's the only note card I have, but a great quote by Gandhi. Gandhi said, "The moment there is suspicion about a leader's motives, everything he does becomes tainted." The moment there is suspicion about a leader's motives, everything he or she does becomes tainted. Because now all of a sudden, you tell me, hey, jump off this cliff. That water is deep enough. I've done the research. You won't get hurt. If you trust me, you're in the air already because I have developed that trust. You trust me. I have good character. I've never let you down before, and you're going. But if you don't trust me, all of a sudden it's, hey, sir, before I jump, I'd like to go on down and kind of measure that water, or can I have that in writing? How many times did you hear that? I want you to get this done right away. Go. And hey, boss, you left Mary out to dry 2 weeks ago. You told her to go, and when it didn't go well, you threw her under the bus. I don't think I'm about to go. I need that in writing, because when she said you told her to, you had a memory lapse. You couldn't remember telling Mary, and you did it in your office. None of us could hear it. It's all going through your mind. You're not probably saying this, or else you're loading the pistol and putting it to your head probably. But maybe you are saying it. Maybe you're saying, hey, boss, people lost trust in you because you have a breach in your character. So you only get one chance. You earn character every day. Every day you earn it. Every day you maintain it. One day you make a slip and you lose it. It falls through your fingers. How much time in building that character? You own your own character. I mean, they quoted Senator McCain saying, your friends can't give it to you and your foes can't take it away. That was a quote from Senator McCain that was used during the lecture here. And he's absolutely right. It's my character. I own it. I'm proud of it. And I'm willing to stand tall and go open kimono. You want to see my character? This is what I'm made of. This is what I stand for. So a very simple equation. Trust equals character plus competence. On the other hand, if you sleep in every day, you have a piece of equipment you're responsible for a briefing, and you don't get that done, you become incompetent. Incompetent. Let the team down. You let the team down. In our business, if you're running a radar and we're in the attack, and I say, give me a hard fixed position, I want to know exactly where that target is, give me mensurated coordinates, get that JDAM on that target, the infantry's crossing the line of departure, young men, young women going into battle, we got it in 8 minutes. I want to take it out now. And you come back to me and go, I've been reading that chapter on how to use the radar and how to mensurate those coordinates, but I'm not quite there yet. Well, then you have shown a breach in competence. And that's kind of the extreme where life, limb, and eyesight hinges on it. But it happens in industry. It happens everywhere all the time. So if I do a half-assed studying, preparing myself, am I part of the team, and have I earned the trust of those around me? So simple equation. I got to pick this up or I'll be here all day. Courage. Definition of courage out of an old Marine Corps manual. I apologize for going back to my roots. An old Marine Corps manual. It states, courage is the mental state, which kind of blew me away when I was a young guy. I thought it was, you want some of this? But courage is a mental state that recognizes fear of danger. Fear of danger. Something's about to happen, could be bad. I heard this guy mouthing off, and I said, hey, pal, shut up. And he stood up, and the lights went on. I went, whoa. You know, that's a little bit of fear of danger. So it's a mental state that recognizes the fear of danger or the fear of criticism. Fear of criticism. This is an old manual. So this isn't something that just started. I want to be cool. I want to be accepted. I don't want to be known as a jerk. I don't want to uphold that standard because everyone will make fun of me. You know, fear of danger, easy. The adrenaline rush comes, and you pump up, and it's either fight or flight. And hopefully on the courage side, you suppress, you take that energy, and you calmly execute the mission, fighting your way through the danger. All right, but the fear of criticism piece is a tough one. That's the moral courage. How many speakers talked about you have to have moral courage? I mean, Director Free talked about moral courage. Ms. Chambers talked about moral courage. All the panels talked about you have to have the moral courage. We threw out terms like moral compass also. You know, where do you know yourself? How is your moral compass? If I'm afraid of criticism, does it swing down here because I don't want to take on that criticism? Do I really have moral courage if it's situational? Or do I make the tough call and do what's right because I know it's right? So courage, mental state, not physical, fear of danger, adrenaline you got to overcome. And I'm willing to tell you, fear of criticism has adrenaline flow too. When you see something you have to become engaged in, and you should become engaged in, do you walk away? Do you absolutely walk away out of fear of criticism? Well, and we'll get to the last slide that'll drive that point home again. But Coach Brown, what did Coach Brown say? I mean, I'm a Pennsylvania boy. I wanted to go to Penn State University. I needed a scholarship because there was 9 kids in the family. I didn't get the scholarship. I wanted to wrestle there. And I love Joe Paterno. I mean, he's been there since I was, I think, an infant, and everybody loves Joe Paterno. But Coach Brown said that Joe Paterno, the worst thing he ever said in his life was when he said, I wish I could have. I wish I could have done more. And Coach Brown homed in on the words could have. Could have? You are Joe Paterno. You are the leader of your organization. I commanded at some pretty high levels. You can't abrogate that responsibility. There's no such thing as should have. Did I do everything in my power to make sure right was done? And if the answer is, I gave it my best shot, I reported it, we have a saying in the military, action past is action complete. And I say action past is a start. If you say it's action complete, I'm going to give you a red card if you want to use the soccer analogy, because you just said, oh man, do I feel good now? I told somebody else about the challenge and the problem. Is that true leadership at that point in time? And I only threw Coach Paterno out, who I love, because Coach Brown mentioned it, and I wanted to make sure everybody picked that up when he homed in on the words should have. And if I only could have. Could have means there was nothing else I could have done. Well, I think in retrospect, we've all been there where we even if we took the time to push it to that level, good for you. Because a lot of young men and women and old men and women won't even push it to that level. But did you push it to that level and didn't got any results? It appeared people above were ignoring. They slid it under the carpet. No one will ever find out about this. Who else? Remember Director Free when he walked into the National Security Advisor? He said, here's where it is. It looks like they were Iranians. Here's the 14 guys that blew up the Khobar Towers. And the National Security Advisor looks down and goes, who else knows about this? And Director Free was appalled. He said, I was shocked. It's the last thing I expected to hear. I'd done my job. We had pinned the blame. And because there was going to be some rough politics between us and Iran, all of a sudden, maybe justice was going to be pushed down below. Maybe it needed to be based on some other big deal, but if you're in that situation and somebody ever looks at you and you've done the right thing and they're not all excited about, thank God you found this out, we're going to fix it, then I think you have to press it a little further. Your moral courage, you got to rise up to that. Where's your moral compass? I think that all comes together. If it looks like I'm not going to be cool and I'm going to be bad, my moral compass says, this isn't that big a deal. This isn't that important. Therefore, let's just let this one go. Well, if you're the leader and you have uncompromising standards, and I'll slide into some other bullets here. You define what good looks like. In this organization, let me tell you what good looks like. We stand for these principles. They are unwavering. They're uncompromising. We uphold these every day in our lives, and we live our core values. Oh, boy. Well, I'm glad I'm in this organization. Boy, it sounds pretty good. Then you walk on out, and all of a sudden people are saying, well, you know, that policy's not that important. Everybody breaks that one. Well, this one, a few people adhere to it. In other words, you have an organization where you have uncompromising standards, but people pick and choose based on what they believe is right or wrong. And how many times at the academy, in the military and in organizations, and again, I'll use the phrase, the most popular phrase, that's a chicken shit regulation. That's bull. How does that make us better? Why do we do that? Well, first of all, you ought to be able to articulate the why, but if you and the organization don't like a particular regulation, rather than prostitute your integrity and compromise your uncompromising standards by violating it, go after it to change it. I mean, because you can say all day long, hey, I'm a man or woman of character. You know, the Internal Revenue Service, they get more out of me than they get out of most. And I'm happy to tell you I cheated on my income taxes by virtue of doing this, and I checked, and they only screened to this level, so I'm below the margin of getting caught. You know, and I've heard that conversation by somebody who I held in pretty high esteem. And all of a sudden I said to myself, first of all, why would you do it? Second of all, why would you tell people that you were violating your own personal integrity and you were compromising your character because you thought it was cool to get a little bit bigger return on your income tax? And there's 1,000 examples you could all use. I only throw that one out because that individual went from riding a horse, you know, and ready to rock, and I'm behind him, to suspect, back to Gandhi. I now had suspicion about that individual's motives from that point on, because he self-aggrandized. He did it because he was going to benefit from it. Screw the larger cause, the nation and the tax code. And it wasn't because he was stupid. It was actually because he was smart, and he figured out a way to stay below the getting caught margin. Not, you know, it wasn't like a loophole, and it wasn't a legal deduction he found and shared it with everyone. It was a way to cheat and pay less, and he was bragging about it. So it's everyday life. It's just not in big decisions. Sometimes small things tell you about a person's character. Somebody pulls in a handicap spot, and you walk up and say, hey, you know, what are you doing in the handicap spot? I'm only going to be 5 minutes. Well, what if in those 5 minutes somebody like Lieutenant Snyder pulls up here and he has to get out and tap away? I mean, I take that personally. And I'm not telling you to go up to everybody and say, asshole, get out of that spot. I don't see how, because that can have repercussions, or if you do, make sure you see how big they are before you do it. That's situational ethics right there. But I'm just telling you that everything you do, and the bigger you are as a leader, you can't say, I want a timeout. I want a timeout. I don't want everybody looking at me today. I want to do something that's maybe a little bit on the shady side. Not necessarily illegal, but violate maybe our uncompromising standards slightly. No timeouts for leaders. And that was one of the Sergeant Major's great lines. He'd look at an NCO and say, what'd you do that for? Well, Sergeant Major, I was out in town. I didn't think anybody stopped. So you called a timeout? You called a timeout from being a United States Marine, and you're a non-commissioned officer? Ooh. You know, and everybody go, oh, man, no timeouts, no timeouts. But that was one of the Sergeant Major's big drum beats, because when will you call a timeout in combat? When they need you. Oh, you know, it's really getting hot in here, timeout. Whole team looks for leadership. He used to call it gun hood. You know, not back in the neighborhood hood, but you know, you put your park up and you just go in like this. That's gone hood. That's when a leader has cashed their chips in. I've gone hood. I don't want the responsibility anymore. This situation's too onerous. I just go to ground. Then somebody else has to pop up in the team and take over and run with it. And you see it everywhere. You see it in business, but really in combat, it's life, limb, and eyesight at risk. What does good look like? We talked about that. So I'll jump down to the one. How many people talked about selflessness and servant leadership? What, maybe 4 or 5 different speakers drove that point home. You can be the authoritarian leader. I have the power. You know, I have rank at West Point. You're junior to me. I'm telling you what to do. I'm going to demand you do it, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And if you don't do it, you're going up on report, and you'll face the consequences. Well, the draconian kind of authoritarian leader doesn't take the time to build the team. And on the other end of that spectrum is the persuasive leader. You build an environment, takes a lot of time. Persuasive leadership takes time, takes energy. You got to build it one block at a time. People earn confidence in you. The authoritarian leader thinks that work it's not common for people. They hate work. They'll stop at it. As soon as you turn your back on them, they'll quit. They're not motivated by the cause. They're only motivated to be there the minimum amount of time, and if you're not watching them, they won't perform to their maximum. The persuasive leader believes that if I build this environment where everybody's on the team, we share common values, that when it's all said and done, when I'm gone, they work harder. They work better when I'm gone because they don't want to let me down. Now, probably both of them are a little bit, maybe on the ends of the spectrum, so you need something in the middle, but you have to decide which type of leader you want to be. If you were to find a dictionary, this used to be a great talk I used to give to the young lieutenants. I used to say, go grab your dictionary and look up in the dictionary the word selfish and highlight it. And then look up the word selfless and highlight it. And there's about 1 inch between them in the dictionary. And the title of that talk was Leadership is a Game of Inches. A game of inches. The selfless leader means all else before self. I am selfless. When I show up, and you're doing, and I'll use some military analogies, but you can convert them over. Here comes the hot chow. The hot chow comes out to the area. I'm the lieutenant, or I'm the captain, or I'm the general. Doesn't matter. And they open up the vat, and the steam's coming out. We're all cold. We've been doing cold weather training, been out there for 5 days. And who walks up first to eat? The junior man or woman. The most junior person gets the first crack at the food. Who is at the very end? It's the sergeant major, followed by the commander. And that's leader is last. When you put an L up, I know it means loser the most. But in our business, when you throw that L up, that means I'm last. My default is the leader. You're in the desert. Everybody's thirsty. We got one canteen. You're a squad leader. You're a sergeant. You're 19 years old, maybe 20. And you have the one canteen left. You start with the junior man, and it passes all the way through the unit. And it gets to you. There's backwash in it. It's warmer now than when it started. And maybe it's empty. Maybe it's empty. But that's what the leader suffers. The leader shares the hardships and takes the least. It's time to draw your gear. Do you walk out in the brand new stuff coming out of supply, or do you make sure as the leader that you look worse than the preponderance of your men and women? Whoever you are, that's a hard thing to do because people want you to look good. Hey, sir, we went down. They're taking it out of plastic bags and they're handing it to you. Here's your flak jacket, and hell, it's never, there's not a spot on it. Here's your whatever. Everything is brand new because you are the leader. Default from that. Think about what they're looking at when you walk out in front of them. Leadership's a contact sport. You walk out to make contact. You're freshly pressed. Your cheeks are rosy, and you've got a full belly full of acorns. They look at you, and they're gaunt. Their uniforms are torn up. They've been at it for days and days. Be part of them. Make sure the most junior man has the best gear. The most junior woman has the best gear. And it's not a natural. It's the antithesis of what nature tells you. When you were a kid, we're having ice cream. There's 4 bowls, and there's 5 of you. You're in there. I'm getting one of those 5. But later on, when you're the leader, you step back. It's your place not to have the bowl. Quick story. I'm a junior officer, and we're flying away to combat. We're going to go rehearse combat at a distant base. We get to the airfield, and there's a big mass of us there, and we're getting on Air Force aircraft. But the crew day runs out, and what that means, they can't fly because they got up too early to take off because they can't land before they run out of appropriate rest, crew rest. And that's a good law to have. They waive it in combat a lot, but this isn't combat, it's an exercise. So they come off and say, you're all going to spend the night here. I remember I'm a second lieutenant, so I'm over there and I this is a hard ground here, and man, it's getting cold, and there's only one bathroom for all these people, and okay, well, I got it. I'm throwing my little mat down, little skinny mat on the hard tarmac, throw my sleeping bag down, and here comes this sedan. I'll never forget it. This black sedan comes roaring up around the bend, comes on over, the flags are flying on it, and this young lieutenant jumps out, and the colonel's standing there. He walks up to the colonel. I can't hear it because it's down there. He's saluting the colonel, and the colonel puts his hand on him. He's talking to the lieutenant, and they get over to the car, and the lieutenant stops. The colonel salutes him, gets back in the car. Well, immediately when they pulled up, I'm thinking, man, someday maybe I'll be that colonel. I bet you he's going to go to the O Club and have a beer, and I bet you he's going to go to a nice BOQ room and take a shower. He's going to have a big bed, and he's going to sleep there that night. And man, someday maybe rank has its privileges, I'll be there. Car door shuts, lieutenant drives off. Colonel walks over next to the sergeant major, throws his mat down, throws his sleeping bag down, and gets in it. And all of a sudden, didn't seem that hard where I was lying. The line for the bathroom didn't seem that long anymore because the leader made the right decision that they were going to stay with everybody else. They were not going to be special. They weren't going to be empresarial. I never forgot that, and that's always been my default from that day when I was a second lieutenant. You fast forward into, now here's the selfless piece. We're in Iraq, battle's raging on. We come on down, units are coming off the line. Here's this tough, chiseled lieutenant, probably 24, 25 years old. And he's been in combat with his platoon, 42 men, reinforcements probably up around 50 or 60. He's got 50, 60 warriors. He's been leading them into battle. We pull them off to come back, rearm, refit, have some chow, rest up a little bit before they go back into the fight, because we're rotating forces, because we're keeping the heat on the enemy. I look over and the lieutenant's kind of all by himself over here. So I go up to the company commander. I go, hey, Captain, what the hell's wrong with your lieutenant? Last time I was down here, he was like King Kong. He was exuding energy, and everybody was around him, and they were getting it on. And he said, well, sir, he had a breach of character. I said, what do you mean he had a breach of character? Well, listen to this. It was time to go get the food. So the lieutenant says, look, you all rest up. I'll go get the food. Leader's last, thinking about his men, get cleaned up, rest up, good call. Rides on out to get the food in a Humvee. Comes on back. They all pull up to get the chow. He starts passing the food out. Here comes the sheet cake. That's a big sheet of pound cake. There's a big chunk gone up in the right-hand corner. It's gone, you know. And you see the platoon, the sergeants, everybody looking down. And here comes the Gatorade. And one, instead of having 24 in it, has 23. And they look at that. And they look up to the lieutenant and they say, sir, you didn't eat before the men, did you? And he looked at them all and said, hey, look, it was just a piece, moral compass, situational ethics. It was just a piece of pound cake. There's plenty there for everyone. Sir, you took a Gatorade too. Hey, I counted them. There's one for everybody. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. He breached the unwritten contract of leader goes last, take care of your men and women, selfless service, servant leadership. He broke it. And even though he led them in combat, they did not know if they could trust him or not because of that small breach. Small breach, it would seem to everybody else, you would go, hey, what the hell, are you kidding me? Everybody got a piece of cake, didn't they? Yeah, but he got his first, and that's not what he stands for. So just a couple quick examples there. But the selfless, selfish, if you go back, if nothing else, if you take a note card out, write selfless on it. Selfless on it. Look up the definition. What's it mean to be selfless? All else before self. Committed to a larger cause. All the things you heard the speakers say. Look up what Webster or Google or Wikipedia or whatever we do nowadays says, and then go to the back and say, okay, how about me? What are my virtues that make me selfless? How do I make my default when I'm hungry and thirsty? I don't grab the first Gatorade. I pass the container around. How do I know I need to be first up in the morning to lead my men and women, even though I'm tired and I'd like to sleep in? How do I make sure I think those through? So as was set up here, it's almost like rehearsing. We do it in all kinds of sports. We do it in business. If you see something, a template starting to unfold in front of you, you know what's going on and you know what your default is. How do you make sure your selfless default is built the way you want it to be? So hunger, thirst, passion, pride doesn't make you jump in there when you shouldn't. Next slide. I only have 3 slides. We heard Ms. Chambers say that, the results. We're a results-oriented organization. And somebody asked the question, well, if it's all about making money and it's all about results, how do you keep the team together? How do you keep the team fighting for the team cause, the bigger cause than myself if it's all results-oriented? And she made the statement, she said that sometimes how you got the results is more important to the organization than you got the results. In other words, if you sell yourself short, you prostitute your integrity, you find an easy way to get to the brass ring ahead of all your contemporaries, but in the path behind you, you have left broken china, you have left broken feelings, you've disrespected people on your team because it was all about let's get to the end of this. There's a great saying by one of the coaches that said, what are the results? I'm an NCAA coach. Winning is everything. We got to go out there and win. Second place doesn't mean jack to us. We're going for the brass ring. It's all about winning. If the result is winning and it's all about winning, then one of my course of actions could be cheating. It can be cheating. Because cheating might get me beyond those who are playing the game legally and honestly. Cheating in business can get you there. Cutting corners inside the military might get you to where you want to be faster, but it has a price to be paid, a severe price to be paid. So if you're in the situation where you know it's a results-oriented organization, and Ms. Chambers tried to articulate this, but you can't get there, it's just physics. Time and distance won't let you get there, either financially, sales-wise, or whatever. You need to have the moxie to come forward and say, boss, ma'am, sir, I'm not going to hit the mark. I'm not going to be there in the time you wanted me there, but I am not going to compromise the integrity and the ethics that are the core values of our institution, the core values of our service, the core values of our company. So you can always go back to, what does the company stand for? And is it a bumper sticker, or is it a way of life? If it's a bumper sticker, then you're in the wrong company. And if it's a way of life and you challenge the boss put their words back on them, these are our core values, I will have to violate at least one of them to get there. I can make it, but, is that what you want me to do? And if they say yes, a number of the speakers said you have to be willing to resign. If that compromises your character, your integrity, you can't say, gee, I tried. I wish I could have done more. No, later on it'll be, I should have resigned at that point in time because I want to make sure I maintain my reputation and my personal integrity. So hard to do, easy to talk about. They do it in the movies all the time, but in real life, I got a family, I have a mortgage, I have a car payment, I have kids in school. I mean, you can think of 1,000 reasons why your moral compass ought to be wavering. You know, hey, a rational person, no one will think that you're ill of you because you rolled under on this one. I don't believe that. I think many people will think ill of you, and you're just trying to convince yourself, you're trying to come up with situations that permit you to compromise your moral compass. We heard never be the smartest person in the room. What does that mean? If you come in as the smartest person in the room, and here's an example. Boss comes in and says, okay, I want to get the most creative ideas on the table. Big meeting. Rank and file on the sides. You know, the fiddler's 3 or fiddler's 10 at the table. One young major at this meeting jumps up and says, General, I think we should be thinking about doing X, Y, Z. The boss says, you don't think I've thought of that? You don't think that has already been through my head? And if that was that obvious, we wouldn't be doing it right now? That's absolutely the stupidest idea I've ever heard of. I mean, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for even bringing that up. And he turns back and goes, anybody else have an idea? The smartest person in the room, when you have that ego where I have to be the smartest person in the room, you can't take input. It wasn't invented here. We all hear people talk about it. It exists out there. So when you're in the room, have the guts to stand up and put your ideas on the table. If you're in charge, if you are the leader, create an environment where you absolutely encourage discourse, encourage input, and you mandate it. You absolutely mandate it, and you get that discussion done. So that means when you walk in, you don't give them the solution and ask them what they think about it, because now you've stifled imagination. That you're a person of character and competence, therefore they think you probably have it right because you're in charge. But if you come in and say, we got this problem, here's the way I see the problem, and you work it from there, you'll start to get ideas and thoughts. And I'm willing to bet at the end of the day, and you've all probably done this, you'll get enough input from your team, being inclusive, that it'll actually build what you thought was the solution before you walked in. It may be a little bit different to the left or the right or a little taller, but it'll look a hell of a lot like you wanted to do. But what do you have after you've done that? You got buy-in. You got buy-in. You got buy-in now. I got skin in the game. I walk out of that meeting, they go, hey, that was pretty refreshing. Did you see that? I made a point, and at the end of the day, the boss included that point in our final solution. You know, I'm strutting. I'm going back to my office. I'm spiking the ball. I'm doing the chicken dance because I'm having a good day. I feel like, you know what? They need me around here. I must be somebody. But if the boss comes in, he or she dominates the conversation. What I told one table, if you're here, I said that if you're the smartest man or woman in the room does not need a staff. They don't need creative thinkers. What they need is a stenographer to capture their brilliance. Capture my brilliance, and we'll print it up, and we'll all be happy as hell. Well, even if you are the smartest person in the room, when you start to get other people chipping away at your idea, it's going to be better. It is going to be much better. So, truth in lending, I've never had this problem. I've never been the smartest person in the room, so I've never had to face this challenge. But I've been in the room with some others who felt, even if they weren't the smartest, they had to be. It's not a good leadership trait to have. Explain the why. We heard that yesterday. Because I said so doesn't hunt. Used to hunt when I was a young guy. They'd say, I want you to do this. And I'd say, gee, sir, that doesn't make any, hey, did I ask you for your opinion? If I want your opinion, I'll ask you for it. I told you what to do. You got a problem with that? Okay, sir, I got it. We'll do it. Can do. I want you to do it, and I want you to do it this way. And pretty soon, as I got older, I realized this is nothing but painting by the numbers. I don't even know if they have that anymore. They used to come out with a painting, and it had numbers on it, and you get the paint set, and you put number 1 here, number 2 here, and you'd say, wow, look at the picture I painted. Well, did you have any of your creativeness, any of your thoughtfulness in there? But if you let yourself or do it to those below you, and you can call it micromanaging. If you micromanage by telling me exactly not only what to do, but how to do it, and when to have it done by, and what it should look like at the end, anybody could do this job. I want something where I can put my thoughts, my ideas, my creativeness in so I can grow, I can learn. Even if I burn some fingers, that's okay. But at the end of the day, the organization will be better, I'll be better, and I'll have grown vice just becoming like a robot. You told me to do this, and I did it, and I get a pat on the head and a biscuit, and we move on to the next day. And you won't keep your good people. You will keep some of those who want to live their lives that way, and you'll end up with a whole team of them. And then when you have crises, it'll all come unglued. But if you build people who think on their feet, react, have input, and are proud to be there, when the crisis comes, you'll have 10 ideas on how to solve it through you, not doing it on their own. Team pride, self-humility. Lose the words I and me. That's simple. We're in Iraq. We're getting briefed by all these units, and I'm sitting with General Abizaid. At that point, I was the director of operations, which meant I was responsible to make sure that everybody tied in through the entire country of Iraq. We also had Afghanistan, and we had the Horn of Africa. So I am the walking dead, to be totally candid. I was over my head in this job. I wasn't, there was probably somebody else who could have done it much better, but I was in the fight every day, meaning, hey, I got it. I woke up this morning and I'm here. So this guy is up there briefing, 2-star. Well, then I am going to. And as you can see, I have crafted a plan. Well, then my next move will be, and it's I, me, I, me, I, me. There's nothing else but I, me. Never a we, us, they. So we get done. I'm taking all the notes, tying in Baghdad, Iranian border, Syria up here. I'm just looking at it from an operations perspective, but the big boss wasn't. We walked out. He turns to me, he goes, what'd you think about that brief? I think, he's challenging my tactical prowess here. Sir, I'm pretty confident that they're tied in here. They've got good coordination. There are no seams. And he goes, stop. You know what I heard? I heard too damn much I and too damn much me. It's all about that commander, not about the organization. I want you to keep your eye on this one because I'm worried up here. And I had already said, wow, what a professional brief. But I said, yeah, it sucked. It was really bad, sir. So I caved in like a house of cards. But all of a sudden I went back and went, wow, he's absolutely right. So put yourself, you're my staff, and I'm up there with I, me, and you're all thinking to yourself, yeah, we didn't have anything to do with it, huh? Like we didn't work the operational planning team till 2 in the morning for 8 days to craft that order, and he signed it. And how about hey, General, you're really going to like what my team put together. I've got the best staff in the world. We have got this under control. You don't have to worry about us out here. The collective pronouns sell with everybody, and you got to be sincere about them. And deflect the credit. A humble person finds ways to push the team to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, not the individual on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I mean, sometimes that happens, and the team's proud of it if the individual has been a team player. When you make Sports Illustrated, they go, that's our boss, that's our leader, we are proud. But if it's all about, hey, did you see how I ran? If it's all about me, it's never deflecting the glory and never passing out the credit. The organization will see nothing, as Gandhi said, but a self-aggrandizing son of a bitch who's trying to get ahead on his or her own at the expense of the organization. They don't really care about us. Last slide. We heard folks talk about going from good to great. They said never sell short passion, never sell short enthusiasm, and also encouragement. Somebody falls on your team, that could be perceived as personal failure. If you're there to prop them up, give them a little guidance if they need it, and tap them on the shoulder, whatever, and get them back in the game, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Everybody needs it sometime. Even when you're the big boss, you're sitting there, woe is me, you have 50,000 people working for you, all of a sudden a call comes in, and it's your boss, the big guy, the 4-star, goes, hey, how's it going down there? Hey, sorry, well, you don't want to show any chinks in your armor. Oh, we're ready to rock. We're good to go. Everything's going fine. He goes, no, seriously. You get enough sleep? Do you have enough of this? Do you have enough of that? He understands, or she understands. They kind of cut to the chase, give you somebody to sort of talk to. Not bitch, whine, and moan, but just kind of talk factually with. And when that's over, you say, you know what? They do realize we have challenges down here. It is somewhat transparent, because I'm never going to complain or whine or moan unless it's going to cost something on the battlefield or it's going to cost something in business. I need more of this, and I need it now because the why is there. So I think that the last phrase up there is, if you're going to go, and you heard it yesterday, if you're going to go with alacrity. I love that word, alacrity. It's I come out, everybody go, okay, God, I don't think this is going to really work, but boss says we're attacking in about 20 minutes, and whew, boy, I sure hope we come out of this okay. You're in the rank and file, and you're sitting there going, whoa, I don't know about this. Versus, all right, I got the plan. We're in the game, and guess what? Shh, we ride at dawn. And all of a sudden, everybody, oh, yeah, we ride at dawn. I pity these, But sir, it's 2 in the morning. Well, it's just rehearsing, but dawn will come sooner. But what I'm saying is, if it's like, okay, all right, once I leave and once I walk out, especially in a crisis, I better exude confidence. Everybody steady? Steady where you go. We got the fires are right. We're going into combat. Can you imagine walking out right the night before the battle, and here you're taking 10,000 warriors into hellfire and brimstone in a town called Fallujah. And you got a man like Sergeant Major Kent propping you up, because you are second guessing. What if we don't have this right? What if we should have struck more targets? What if we didn't set the battlefield the way it needs to be set? You're in your office going back and forth. Then all of a sudden you walk out, and 3,500 warriors, their boss says, will you talk to my men before we go tomorrow? And you're thinking, Patton, well, you'll know what to do. But you don't have any speech written. You don't have anything. And you walk out and you look at it. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. And they're all holding onto their rifle. They're on one knee. The dust is rising up around them. And your heart's pounding. And all you're thinking is, did I have this right? Am I competent? Do I have the character that they're going to buy into? And are we going to carry the day? And even though I don't think we were comfortable and confident we were going to win the battle, but we knew the price would be onerous. And we ended up losing 82 killed, 800 plus wounded, to include some of the toughest soldiers that I've ever met in my life. It was an Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine fight and battle. It was combined. So I'm not up here talking about just Marines. I'm talking about young men, young women, moral courage, physical courage, but they're looking to make sure that their boss is confident when they go that we shall arrive at the southern end of the town, and when we do, this town will be returned to its rightful owners. And Sergeant Major Kent spoke, and he jazzed them up. They were all fired up. And then the Command Master Chief came out, and he spoke to all the corpsmen and told them what they needed to be doing, and we closed it out. We got in the vehicle while we walked. We walked down to the other end of Camp Fallujah, and the whole way we're walking, Sergeant Major Kent says, sir, I know what you're thinking. We got it right. It's going to work. It's going to be good. But it wasn't, he could see, I guess, on my face, not out there, but going back, I hope we got this thing right. So but when we went out, it was about confidence, exuding confidence, telling them it was going to be tough, but they were trained better. They had the best partners on the battlefield. They could count on each other, having each other's back, and when the sun set on the final day, that we would be victorious. And they were. They were victorious. They were. So, last slide. This is it. Take a look at this one. I think this sums up. I had accountability on the other side. I didn't go to it. If I have self-accountability, I hold myself accountable. I hold myself accountable for what happens and what doesn't happen inside my organization. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Something goes wrong, I don't walk into the boss and say, I told Mary, I told Bob to get it done, and they let me down. If I'm your boss, that's the last time you would be in my office. I don't care what happened in your organization. I'm looking at the person I entrusted to get it done. And if you failed, you just walk in and say, we missed the mark, boss. Ma'am, sir, we missed the mark. I got it. I'll take care of it. I promise. We'll reset and we'll have it accomplished. It might get a little onerous coming back towards you, but the last thing you want to do is all of a sudden become a selfish leader, survival of self-preservation here, and start naming people and throwing them under the bus. People who might have let you down. Maybe you did tell them to get it right and they didn't. But it's just like the captain of a ship. If the officer of the deck runs that ship aground while I'm sound asleep in my bed, I'm responsible for the ship going aground because I certified, I validated the officer of the deck. I stood behind that individual based on their character and their competence and gave them that responsibility. So the captain doesn't run up and go, oh my God, hey Admiral, I'll shoot him. He'll walk the plank in the morning. No, what the captain says is, I'm responsible for everything that happens or doesn't happen on my ship. I take the full responsibility. I'll make sure that we do the necessary things to solve the problem, solve the challenge, but you're going down. You're going down because you're the top dog. So if Confucius said this, if I was going to have a tattoo, I don't have any ink. If I was going to have a tattoo, this would be my tattoo. I would put this on. There's one because when you're a Marine, you get a couple beers in you, one or two, and you're thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a big eagle globe and anchor, kind of right back here on my shoulder blade, No one would ever see it unless I took my shirt off, and then that'd be kind of neat. And my wife early on said to me one day after all the guys were talking at the club, she said, I have 2 words for you and your thought about getting a tattoo. And I said, well, what would those 2 words be, dear? And she said, belt sander. And I went, whoo, that doesn't sound like much fun. So now, but if I were to have a tattoo, this would be it, because I would remind myself every day. Think about this, knowing what's right and not doing it is the worst cowardice. If I walked up to you and I said, you're a coward, you're a goddamn coward, I wouldn't, you'd be on your feet and knuckles would be flying. Okay, I got it. So the physical piece, back to the courage and the physical piece, it's easy. If I said, and some of you have heard me say this before, I ran in this door as an old man and I go, outside, there's a 3-year-old being kidnapped by 2 thugs. I wouldn't want to be in that door because everybody in this room would be fighting to get to the front of the line to make sure justice prevailed, physically taking those 2 guys down and freeing that young man. That's the way we are. But if I said so-and-so's about to lie, cheat, steal, or cover for me, hey, just kind of check the block that I'm here at TAPS tonight because I want to go out for my own personal pleasure. I want to put your career, your life, you in jeopardy and make you wring your hands about compromising your integrity. If I told you someone was about to do that, how many of us, me included, would jump up and run to make sure we prevented it from happening and we stopped it dead in its track? It's before, the coolness. I want to be cool, I want to be accepted, I don't want to be criticized, gets in the way. But when it's physical courage, what makes somebody jump on a grenade, but they wouldn't stop their friend from having one more drink and driving home. They might try, gee, I wish I could have done more. No, you should have done more. So I throw this up. If I was to have one slide on my mirror when I shaved every day, it'd be a toss-up between the selfless slide we talked about and Confucius here. And with that being said, I will tell you, this has been an unbelievable experience. I actually, as an old guy, I got some new tools in my toolbox, just floating around, listening to your questions, listening to the speakers, but really listening to you talk at the round tables, getting it on with each other, kind of define, what do I really stand for? Back to Coach Brown, that last hurdle. Who am I? What do I stand for? And when you do that last hurdle, if you can get past that last hurdle early on in life by defining who you are, your character, your moral compass, I think there's only 3 other hurdles out there, and I think that you'll glide right over them. So without it any more, we have time for questions? How'd I do? No, I didn't ask how I was. I asked how I am. Okay, so mics are open. I'm willing to take anything on. If I don't have an answer, I'll make it up. But that's okay. Please. And if we don't have a question, I'll start singing Frank Sinatra songs. I did it my way.
Hi, sir. I want to thank you for talking. I really enjoyed
Okay, you have to speak up. Or too much.
Okay. So my name is Herschel. I'm a student at Penn State. I did want to kind of point out the quote about Joe Paterno. He actually said he wished he had done more. So the word could was actually not part of his statement, which might just be important to mention. But regardless, I think Penn State taught us that a few individuals, maybe especially one individual doing something really terrible, can kind of destroy the reputation of an institution that represents hundreds of thousands of people. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel leaders can change the way that organizations work to help avoid from this happening? And how can members of this organization help to rebuild trust in the wake of these kinds of events?
Okay, so everybody heard that the actual quote was, I wish I had done more. I wish I had done more, is what he said. Okay, but still, again, that's an indictment of me as the leader. You know, that's in retrospect when I'm going woulda, coulda, shoulda. And before I get to the rebuilding the trust piece, great movie, Groundhog Day. I talked to one of the tables about it, Groundhog Day. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be damn great? It'd be great tomorrow if I could wake up and have to give this talk again, because I do it better. I would. I absolutely would. I put a little more something into it, more juice, more bling, more whatever to carry the day. But if you could live your moral character by Groundhog Day, every day you made a mistake and the alarm went off and you could relive that day, at the end, like Bill Murray, at the end of 10 days, you would have it down pat. But the problem is we don't have Groundhog Day. So when you wake up at 2 in the morning as a leader and your stomach's burning, that's telling you blew it that day. Because you wake up and you're wondering, why can't I sleep? And all of a sudden, it flashes where you should have become involved that day, you walked away from. It's normally a breach in your moral character that wakes you up at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just too bad, like, you know, your default on your computer, your Control-Alt-Delete isn't, whoa, take a couple deep breaths. Something going on here that ain't right. Back to Confucius, knowing what's right and not engaging with it, not doing it, is extreme cowardice. It's always great to grade yourself in retrospect, but try to have something in your moral character, in your compass, that makes you think about it on the front side. And keep in mind, I'm not telling you you're going to be popular, because most of those things that make the adrenaline flow on a moral decision mean you're kind of standing alone. You're out there on the cusp by yourself. So if you take a look at an organization, how do you make sure that the moral compass inside the organization is what you as a leader want it to be? I mean, they all talked about communications, but again, don't send me something when I'm 18, 19, 20 years old or 63 and expect me to have read it. Because, you know, I got a lot going on, I selectively read, therefore I probably won't. And even if I do read it, don't think I understood it. Don't think I really totally understood what you were trying to convey to me, maybe the core values of our organization. What does this organization stand for? I got it. But also the empowerment piece, empower. You don't have to have rank. There's a thing called followership. And followership, when you build an organization with world-class followership, man, you're humming. You are humming, because every follower is also a leader. They understand. They support you. They understand what you're trying to drive home. What are our values? How are we going to make it happen? And then they hold the standard up. Now, this is where Pollyanna has to come in, where in tough situations, if the organization has bought into that uncompromising standard we talked about, you're about to do something wrong. Now, here's where we can't get it right. You're about to do something wrong, you did something wrong. I come up to you and say, hey, what the hell are you doing? I mean, you're going to jeopardize the entire team. You're going to bring the team down, the organization down, the alumni down, if it happens to do with the university. The whole team's going to cascade down because you wanted to do something for personal gratification. And you go, hey, man, come on, get off my back. It's just a stupid standard. Why do you have to be such a jackass about it? Just let me alone. No, I'm not going to let you alone. Well, you are a jackass then. You're telling me. Well, what's the truth? The truth be known, if we've all said these are our standards, we signed up for them. You know, we talked about them. Everybody understands them. We all believe in them. You know, we have been inclusive in building this. Now you're about to violate it. Now, who is the jackass? Is it you? For self-aggrandation, I want to go do X, Y, Z, totally contrary to our standard, because it'll make me feel good, I'll get pleasure out of it, or maybe I'll get personal gain out of it. Whereas the rest of the team is subordinated. I am no longer committed. I have no longer subordinated myself to a larger cause. You should be the knight in shining armor when you call me out on it and hold me accountable. But we're not there in society. We are not there in society, because we grow up thinking, snitch, oh, who ratted him out? You know, who turned him in? Who turned her in? Who ratted him out? Well, you know, if you do this to me, sir, you give me that fitness report, you're ruining my career. I remember that one as a young guy. Heart beating, but I always have I learned early on, if it's going to be ugly when I have a session with somebody, I rehearse it, just like they said. I go through the drill. I'm going to say this, but no one ever said when I told them they were screwed up, like, boy, am I glad you finally called me on it. I was getting away with murder. You know, I've been mediocre since I've been here, and no one said anything to me. Thanks a lot for illuminating me, and you're a good boss. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Oh, sir, who's this written about? This isn't me. How did you ever come up with this? Better be prepared for it, because it's going to be coming at you. So if you uphold the standard, my belief is you are the good person. You are the one who's taken that fear of criticism, overcame it, just like the fear of danger. Come out swinging, easy. Come out talking, not so easy. Not so easy at all. So how do we win this battle? How do you, back to your point, how do you get buy-in within the organization? I think Penn State's off to a great start, by the way. I think that the way the football coaches approached it, the way the athletic departments approached it, new regime coming in, everybody moving on. Hey, let's learn from this and let's get stronger, tougher, faster. It goes back to failure, hopefully on a smaller scale, but failure, if ignored, then you're in denial. But if failure happens and you go, wow, we can all be better for this onerous experience, and I think that's the way Penn State, I believe strongly that's the way they're approaching it. So I think they're climbing out well and fast. Just too bad it had to happen. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's not easy at all. And but like I said, 20 years ago, plant the fruit tree. If you didn't do it then, plant it today. Get rocking. Okay, sir. Semper Paratus.
Good afternoon, or good morning, sir. I'm first class Logier from the United States Coast Guard Academy. So I've heard that sometimes failure isn't what destroys a leader, but how they conduct themselves in their course of action after the failure that destroys a leader. So my question for you is, has there been a time in your career where you had to cut your losses and face the people with failure? And if so, how did you recover from that as a leader?
Okay, it's a great question. I mean, personal failure, it's easy to be jacked up and jazzed up for the team, but what happens when it strikes to home and dead in your heart? We have a thing in the military where we call it command screen. And the dream of everybody in this room is to be a leader and someday win the confidence of those around you and be propelled and have the opportunity, not the privilege, but the opportunity to serve at a higher level. So when I came up for colonel, I was a colonel, I was already selected, and I really wanted to command a Marine regiment. 3,500 warriors, 3 battalions. Oh man, this is what I was born for. The list comes out, and I'm not on it. I'm not on the list. And it's not a secret list that comes, bing, your computer lights up. It goes out to everyone. It doesn't say the following people weren't selected for command, but all the warriors, the centurions, the aviators look who got the squadrons, the ground guys look who got the regiments or the groups, and so do the logisticians. So when I ran to the list, and I went down and I wasn't on it. And I was in an important job at the time. So it was, wow, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed I wasn't selected. How do I show my face? How do I continue to perform the job? Yesterday, I was all jazzed up, let's get rocking, and today, and now look at Lieutenant Snyder. When he wakes up in the morning, he goes, what can I do with what I have? I didn't. I got up the next day and went, man, I didn't want to go to work. And in 30-some years of being a Marine, I'd never missed a day of work. I mean, I'd just been lucky health-wise, but I didn't want to go to work that day. I thought, well, I'll call in sick. I'll give it a couple days to settle down. And then the worst part was when people saw me, it was onerous for them to bring it up. So it goes back to what Ms. Chambers said. Sometimes when you make that call, people think you stink. They go, whoo, you walk around, people are going the other way because, why? They don't know how to come up to you and say, hey, I saw the list, saw you weren't on it. Let me tell you something, doesn't change my opinion of it at all. That didn't happen. It was like, oh man, I bet you he's crushed. He's really, think about this now. They made the call, they made a decision not to approach me and tell me I'm really sorry. Well, then the next year it comes out and I'm an alternate. I didn't make primary, which meant, I got to go to the dance, but I'm dancing with my sister. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I got 5 of them. So it was a hell of a dance. So, and then when you're an alternate, you go, well, maybe someone will die. That's all. I didn't really think that. But so I go through that year as an alternate, another humbling experience. The next year, I'm an alternate. No, next year, I'm not even on it. I went from, gee, I wish I was an alternate again. At least I danced with my sister. The last year I come up, I'm an alternate again, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is the last year I'm looked at. Time for me to go home as a colonel. But a great career, great ride. Got to work with the nation's true heroes, men and women of average speed, average vertical leap, but, heart and courage that goes off the map. So I said to myself, okay, it's over. But it's been a great ride. I had a tough time after each one of those cuts at the ball to get myself jazzed up to be myself. And what I didn't want to do is have a character shift because woe is me, wallowing in self-pity, even though I was. I was in my heart. I was disappointed. I was a little bit hurt. But on the other hand, I look at the people who are going to command, and they were great men and women. So I couldn't say, some people go down and listen and go, I can't believe Eddie got it, and I didn't. I know I'm better than Eddie, because you can fall into that pitfall too. So I guess the bottom line was, those who worked right with me just said, hey, sir, tough blow. We got work to do. I mean, it's a sergeant, Sergeant Deanna Sciardo. She just said, sir, I know you really want to command, and I'm really sorry you're not on the list, but we got a big job here. I mean, the sergeant did. So it was like, okay, quit feeling sorry for yourself. So I think it's something you have to personally deal with, but it sure would have been helpful if some of my good friends would have come up to me and said, wow, really sorry. And I learned a lesson from that. When somebody didn't get selected for promotion, didn't get selected for whatever, and I knew they were having a bad day about it, I found them and called them. And I made sure I talked to them. And any time I ever heard any of my friends or even close associates were in that kind of a situation, when others were going, man, did you hear what happened to Mary or Bob? And I'd say, got it. Go back home, call the command center, get their phone number, give them a call, and talk to them that night. I don't think I would have done that till I experienced it myself. So when somebody is in that tough situation, you need to extend a hand to them, even if it's a pat on the back, even if they're visceral, because sometimes they'll open up. Oh, I got screwed, well, maybe they need to unload. So maybe that's my job to be on the other end of the phone, let them unload. So I guess that's the closest I can get to being disheartened and pounded down. And you know what? Through persistence, eventually it worked. I lucked into it. I'll say lucked into it. Okay? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Brittany from Lafayette College, and I was just curious, a big theme of this conference has been leading by example. And how do you continue to lead by example if you're doubting your own abilities? And how do you know that people are still going to trust you if you might be doubting that you're doing the right thing? And how do you lead that way?
So how do I lead by example if I doubt my ability?
Yeah, like if you're doubting your ability in something and you're not sure if you're doing it the right way, how do you exude to everyone else around you that you feel confident?
All right, so Sergeant Major Kent said your job's harmony. Remember when he said that, harmony? And somebody else said, well, I'm not technically proficient enough to understand everything that my team does. And somebody used the acronym, the Maestro. Here's the Maestro. If I came out, the Maestro can't play every instrument in the organization, but he has to exude confidence that he knows I can create harmony out of the team by virtue of the position I have been granted as the leader. So I can't play the bassoon, or I can't play the piccolo, whatever the hell instrument you want, but I know how to bring it all together, create harmony, so the whole team rises and performs, punches way above its weight. Now, if you don't feel that you have the juice to make that happen, you shouldn't be there. You should be that tank platoon commander that John Nagel talked about, who said, I can't take this tank platoon into combat. You're going to have to find somebody else. I can't do it. I'm out of here. Because, I admire that. And that was personal courage, maybe in the face of a lack of physical courage to do it. I don't know why he did that. But if he would have taken them on in without the alacrity of knowing they were going to win, he could have lost those 15 men and 4 tanks in battle very easily, because there's tough decisions that have to be made with competence and authority. So if you're lacking there, I think you need to take a little look at yourself and say, okay, why don't I have confidence to lead what my bosses thought I was capable and confident to do? And maybe it's a little education, maybe it's talking to a mentor. So there's ways to overcome that. Not being able to land on a carrier deck in an F-14 when you're probably one of the only females in the whole squadron. Wow, that was powerful. What the commander talked to us about the other day. Just not being able to hit the arresting gear. And if you can't land on the carrier, that's your whole career. That's why we have naval aviation, to be able to project power from a carrier. Taking off is one thing, but you got to be able to land it. Her courage on that, in the face of what was probably looking at her, that is unbelievable. And for her to come up here and talk to us all about it was even more unbelievable. So I think you got to, if you can't grasp that confidence in yourself, you need to leave your position. That would be my take. Okay, thank you. And we're out of time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess I'll close now by saying, wow, what an experience. If you don't have a toolbox, it ought to be like a little recipe box, by the way, nothing as obnoxious as they gave me. But if you had a little toolbox, you have a little tab in the middle. Front side says good tools. These tools are shit hot. They worked well. They jacked me, they motivated me, and I've seen others just jumping through the overhead, jazzed and ready to go based on the tools I have in the front half. Then you have one in the back called bad tools. And you're going to see bad tools. You're going to see bad leadership. I heard it mentioned a couple of times you can learn from bad leadership. You've got to catalog the bad tools. The bad tools are probably vice grips, and they're probably a sledgehammer. But then maybe there's a time for both of them, but not every time. But when the adrenaline, my experience, when the adrenaline's flowing in young men and women and old men and women, the stakes are high, the pressure's on, and you've got to make a decision that either my business might fold or it might cost life, limb, and eyesight. Sometimes we reach in the toolbox and we grab a bad tool because it fits our hand in the crisis, and we come out wailing it when it's not my normal personality. So catalog the good ones, look at them every once in a while to make sure that they're in your hands when you need them. Then look at the bad ones with the do not. Trust me, it might look like this tool will work, but it won't, because I've seen it fail miserably. And I think you'll be in good shape. So tell your significant other, your spouse, your parents, you want a toolbox for Christmas, and start filling that sumbitch. All right? Hoorah! Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Sattler, for your inspiring words on behalf of the Naval Academy Leadership Conference staff. We made a small donation in your honor to the Semper Fi Fund.
That's it. When you get old, you don't need any more coffee mugs. Make donations to an organization like Own the Word Project for Soldiers, or in our case, for the sailors, Marines, and soldiers who fought with Marines, the Semper Fi Fund. If you're looking to say, well, since I'm not getting anything else for Christmas but a toolbox, maybe you could have those folks make a donation in your name to an organization like the Semper Fi Fund. Takes care of wounded warriors and their families who have stood on the wall so we can be here today. And as in the case of Lieutenant Snyder, have made a sacrifice that I can't even fathom. I absolutely can't